Hi, welcome to the series on bluegrass. Just like all the other genre series, we're going to start real basic, real simple. And we're going to start today with just kind of going over some really common bluegrass chords. So, if you're in this series, you already kind of know what bluegrass sounds like. And we're going to get into first the bluegrass rhythms and the basics, alternating bass lines, walking bass within the chords, and eventually we're going to work our way up to the flat picking style and playing melody with the chords and such. So, and also improvising down the road. But we're going to start basic, like we always do here. So in this lesson, specifically, we're going to talk about common bluegrass chords. A lot of them you'll already know. Some of them might be a little bit different. And also, to note, as a prerequisite, I highly recommend that you've at least gone through the beginner volumes and you have a basic knowledge of chords and scales and such. So the first 5 volumes are what we would consider the beginner course. Okay, so common bluegrass chords. We're going to start first. First, there's a few keys that are common in bluegrass. It's really common to play in the key of G and the key of C because there's a lot of open chords, and they use a lot of open chords with open strings. So that is something you might want to note. So we're going to start with chords. The C major chord is going to be a common chord, and we should all be familiar with that one. And then a different version of this, and if you pull up the PDF that I've provided with, has all these chords on it, the second one there, C/G. So if you take your C chord, you're going to move your third finger up to the 3rd fret on the low E string and put your pinky on the root note, the C, the 3rd fret of the A string. The reason, and that's a C/G, so it's a C major chord with a G note on the bottom or on the bass. The reason we might play this type of chord is because of the alternating bass lines that you would hear in bluegrass a lot. Stuff like that. So you could also, if you didn't want to do that, you could move your 3rd finger up and down like that. But you really want to get comfortable playing this chord. So we have C. We have C over G, and you can just kind of practice moving just going back and forth. There's no particular exercise here in this lesson. We're just going over the basic chords. Then we have a G major, which we all know. Okay. Now you'll see there the 4th chord in the chord chart PDF shows the same G major chord, but different fingering. So we're going to finger it sometimes like this. So 3rd finger, 2nd finger, pinky down here. The reason that is because it's common. You could use then your 1st finger to play a C back here. So you could get something like, and play this chord like that. So get used to playing a G like this as well. It's also good for when we start playing melodies, you're staying in the same position and not having to shift a lot. Or to be able to go back to a G7 chord easily by just lifting your pinky, putting your 1st finger on the 1st fret of the high E string. So that's another thing that you might see. And then we have another G major chord, and you see me play this one a lot, and it's basically if you take your regular G major chord and you move your 3rd finger up to the 3rd fret of the B string and your pinky now plays on the 3rd fret of the high E string. It doesn't really change the chord much, you're just adding another D note to the chord, which is the 5th, so you're just doubling up the D. So you're not adding a different note to the chord, you're just adding another note, doubling up the D. Okay, so that's that. And then we have some F chords, which would be more used when we're playing in the key of C. So if your basic F chord like this, we're barring the first fret, E and B string. Got to really arch the second finger for the second fret of the G string, and then your third fret goes on the third fret of the D string. That's an F chord. It comes from your F bar chord, but you're not playing all the notes. You're just playing the E, B, G, and D string. And much like the C over G, we have an F over C, which is the same type of thing. So if you take this chord, you move your third finger up and put your pinky on the third fret of the D string. Now we have the fifth of F, which is C on the bottom, where our third finger is there. And that will allow us to play that alternating bass line. So that's another fingering you definitely want to get familiar with, the F over C. And then we have our D major chord, which we all know. And then the last one there is the trickiest one probably, and that's a D with an F sharp on the bottom, which you gotta roll your thumb over and hit with your thumb. And this allows you to be able to do, it's the third on the bottom, not the fifth. But you'll see that a lot to add some bass to this chord, some bass texture. So you use your thumb, you can mute the A string, we don't need that, so if your thumb's bumping the A string, that's fine. Kind of a tricky chord to get used to with your thumb. You could bar it, but that would really only work if you were using like a hybrid picking, where you're using a pick and your fingers, because it's hard to skip over that A string when you're barring it. Doesn't really sound, and you'd have to skip over the D strings. That really isn't going to work. You could kind of do something like this, but then you're not getting the third here on the E string. So I think really the best way is with your thumb to get all the notes of the chord. Okay, so just kind of practice those chords, practice moving from one to the other. And just get familiar with those. And then the next lesson, we're going to start with the basic common bluegrass rhythm.